Hey everybody, happy 2025. I'm recording this on January 1st. It's a lovely sunny morning. I've tried so many times to film this video. I had it done last month. I spent 3 whole days editing this video, and it was in a different way, different format, different conceptualization. When it came to exporting, it vanished, it disappeared. There was a storage issue and all my files got lost and eliminated into the ether. So that video, my baby died. And then I tried a couple more times to film this and it just wasn't working. I had technical issues. So at this point, I'm like, please, I just want to get this video done. I just want to rank these movies and move on. So anyway, here I will be tier ranking these movies that I watched. It's around 34 movies, 35 movies that I watched this year, maybe 32. But yeah, let's get started. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with Baby Girl. It felt very intimate and private, the stuff you were watching, and you go into it thinking it's one thing based off the trailer, but then by the end it's like, oh, this was a way more nuanced, way more raw, more emotionally heavy experience than I initially went into it thinking. Nicole Kidman's character is very multifaceted. I liked that. All in all, the cast was great. Pacing and editing, this was one of the parts that I was like a little less sold on. Certain moments linger too much for me, and then certain moments come back around. Like, it felt kind of repetitive at times. It felt like there were certain chunks we didn't really need, that if they had been cut out, it would have kind of been the same overall experience. The sound and the music did add a lot to the experience, done by the guy that did the White Lotus score and the Smile 2 score. I don't know if he did the first one, but Cristobal Tapia de Ver. Bitch, you are one of my musical inspirations. Renaissance is one of the songs. Like, I love that song. It's a banger. And I love the influence he brought to Smile 2. And I love that, like, real, like, breathy, human morphing, playful music and sound that he brings to his projects. Yeah, I would say Baby Girl lands in, like, pretty good territory. Okay, next up is Nosferatu. Nosferatu was directed by Robert Eggers, who did The Witch, and The Northman, and The Lighthouse. The Witch I enjoyed upon first watch. When I went back and rewatched it last year, I didn't think it held up as well. I think visually it does, but like once that first experience, you have that first really suspenseful watch, it doesn't really hit the same the second time. I didn't finish The Lighthouse. I got bored. And then The Northman I thought was a very underwhelming experience. For Nosferatu, I appreciated the gothic visuals. I appreciated the color palette. I appreciated the production of the world, the design of the world. I liked that, the outfits, but it wasn't scary. And I keep seeing people say how like classical horror isn't really always scary or supposed to be scary in like the way modern audiences are used to, but yeah, this movie just didn't really work for me. It was a bit too dry, it was a bit too dull. The moments I think it was trying to be impactful and have like a moment kind of barely worked. There's one striking moment in that movie involving children that worked for me, and I was like, oh fuck, finally we're getting there, you know? But it always just kind of pulls back, and I know it's gonna be some people's like #1 horror movie of the year, and the performances, you know, I wouldn't be able to do the that Lily Rose Depp was doing. I can't speak too much about her dramatic performance. She was just a very shell-shocked looking character the whole time. And then Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu, I didn't even recognize him. I had no idea who was playing him for the majority of the time. I was like, who is this? Where was he on the red carpet? Turns out it was Bill. He transformed. I didn't even recognize him, so he did good. But Nosferatu as a presence, obviously if he was standing in my room, the way he looked and would be terrifying, right? But when you think of Nosferatu, when you think of the vampire, when you think of that classic terrifying image of Nosferatu from the black and white movie, even just that still image of the black and white Nosferatu is a lot more scary to me than what they were doing in this movie. He didn't look off enough. He just looked like a crusty, dusty old man. And the fact that I wasn't familiar with the source material, so all of it was new to me, the fact that this was just a cucking incel story, I'm like, no thank you. Some people are gonna be like, fuck you for saying this. It was a great ass movie. Fuck you. How the hell are you gonna be saying this shit? I'm gonna put it in forgettable as fuck. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It just was not the horror movie for me. And who knows, maybe I'll go back and rewatch it. And someone on TikTok was like, y'all, this is a movie you pop on at home. You watch it on a rainy, cloudy day with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in hand, and you get into the vibe. And I'm like, I could see that. I could see Nosferatu being a cozy horror movie. But upon this first impression, where it falls in the 2024 agenda picture, I'm going to put it in forgettable as fuck. Okay, next up is going to be Wicked. This one I went into knowing nothing. I sat myself down in the theater and I was like, all right, let's see what we're getting. And what I got was such an experience that I wasn't expecting. From the very beginning, just the way it throws you in to the Oz in present day, and you're like piecing together what's going on, and the way these people are singing, the lyrics are very... This movie felt so tongue-in-cheek, so double meaning-ish, you know what I mean? Like Elphaba singing about being so happy she could melt, Elphaba singing about someday there's gonna be a celebration in Oz, all for me. I'm like, girl, you don't even know. The way the opening song perfectly just sets up that dynamic of like good versus evil, and how the victor is the one that writes the history books. And yeah, I don't know. I loved getting to know the actual deeper layer of these characters. Glinda, I hated her at first, and then I started feeling a lot better towards her, about her towards the end, but still towards the end I was like, Elphaba, she ain't it. She ain't it. She was never really it for you. But I don't know what happens in part 2. I don't know what's the tea that's going to happen in part 2. I don't want to know until part 2 comes out. But as like a production, the choreography, the music, the blocking, all of that worked so well for me. The villains did feel a bit somewhat like one-dimensional, and it didn't feel like they got enough time, but I feel like they're going to get more time in part 2, right? So yeah, all in all, this one was, I'm going to put it in pretty great because I really, really loved it. And I've been singing Defying Gravity for like the past month. The goosebumps. I just got goosebumps so much. And it felt like this movie was like almost capturing the experience of the musical in movie form in a way that like many musical to movie adaptations can't capture. But I have heard some people say that still the musical is so much better. So I don't know. But John Chu, he did his thing. I'm going to put it in pretty great. Okay, next up, I'm going to be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. Congratulations, Marvel. You didn't fuck it up. It was fun and funny. A better done multiverse movie than Multiverse of Madness. Plot felt a little bit thin to me in this one. It felt like a kind of like contrived setup. There were good fights. The van fight being my favorite, I think. But the other ones just felt a little bit like, you know, you've seen it before. The obvious screen usage as well, I'm over that with Marvel. But as a product, as a sequel, as like a continuation in the Marvel universe, I think it worked. I think people were pretty pleased. Hugh Jackman, I know nothing is sacred anymore. And, you know, an ending isn't always an ending anymore. Him reprising his role as Wolverine, it's iconic. I just hope they don't run it into the ground eventually. And honestly, with Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool, he's kind of always gotten on my nerves a little bit. The shtick, the whole, I'm sarcastic, I never take anything seriously, I make everything a sexual joke, I make everything dirty, I'm prone to being wacky and going off the rail. Like, I don't know, it stopped working for me a bit, but people love it, and it would be interesting to see Deadpool going forward in the MCU, seeing how they implement him, seeing if we get more R-rated Marvel projects. So yeah, I'm going to put this one in high average. High and offensively average movie, because I did have a good time watching it. So yeah. Next up is going to be Anora. What can I say about Anora? The beginning of the movie seems like it's setting up Anora for it is a rude awakening for her, but it almost feels like it's going to take a much heavier, darker turn than it does. What we end up getting is like these this group of guys that ends up being in her life that are way more down to earth, grounded, funny than you would think. They're still not the best dudes, like they go around smashing shit, but they're really just interested in keeping their jobs, keeping their bosses happy, and even just keeping Honora out of trouble and keeping the rich kid out of trouble. So like I enjoyed that aspect of it. It was funny without trying, funny in a very organic and real way. The script was great, the dialogue was great. Negatives, I can't think of any. I can't express. It's just such one of those movies. It's like such a perfect. You can't. How do you critique an Oreo cookie? You know, you get such a good product like out of the box and you're like, that was good. The cream filling, that was really good and sweet. The chocolate was a perfect complementary thing to the cream filling. Like it's just such a well done movie. There's really nothing to pick apart about it. There's nothing to, yeah, it's so good. It was good. And I'm gonna put it in pretty great. Pretty great. It's not an all-timer for me personally, but I think it's like one of the all-timers of this year of 2024. So yeah. Okay, Terrifier 3. I made a video on Terrifier 3 and I feel like I was really hard on it. All in all, it's a fun, gory ride, and even if I enjoy the more grindhouse, more mysterious, esoteric like origins of art, and less of this like mythology that's now building up around him, I thought Terrifier 3 was such a huge improvement over Terrifier 2 in pacing and plot and characters and performances. But the kill, yeah. I feel like, okay, so my thing with the kills in the Terrifier movies is like, I liked when art felt a little more hands-on with it, and this one it feels like they're really going forward with the props thing, which is fine, you know, he's got the little grab bag of props, but I really did enjoy the way he got really up in there in Terrifier 1, you know, and the way he really got up in there in the bedroom scene as well, like, I just want him to still always be this very sinister, not so jokey killer, but you know, it works. It still works. I didn't like Vicky, the aspect of that. You know, the cover of Jason Goes to Hell? That energy was like brought into this movie. There's like a tube feeding like cannibalized body to art. Like I don't know. It just got a little bit weird to me in a not horrific way, just weird. Like, oh, we're doing this? Like, okay. So yeah, the Vicky aspect, the Gabby aspect, I just didn't like Gabby really. And I like her brother more. And we got way less of him in this one. I wanted more of him, less of Gabby, but it looks like we're getting way more of Gabby than of him going forward. It takes itself really seriously sometimes, this movie. Tonally, like, it was a mismatch at times. I'm like, I came here to be scared and have fun, not necessarily to get this, like, very, I'm traumatized and damaged and I'm broken and, like, I'm angry at the world for not realizing it kind of story, you know? Sort of like the Jamie Lee Curtis treatment. If you can do it well, then great. But I don't know, the way it was fit here, I didn't really like. And then at the end, there were some portions that felt a little bit truncated, some like poor pacing / editing of the third act coming together. But all in all, this was a really good time. I loved looking forward to it. I loved the theater experience with it, and I can't wait to watch the fourth one and the fifth one and the sixth one. So yeah, Terrifier 3 is going to go in pretty high, pretty good. High, pretty good. Next up is another horror movie, In a Violent Nature. I have been very hard on it because I thought it was a very dull experience. One of the most frustratingly just dry experiences going to the movies. They had a good concept, and that's why it was so frustrating. It's like you could have done more creative, not necessarily expensive decisions to make this movie interesting and work within your constraints. But what we just got was a camera following a man, interspersed with periods of him hacking and slashing. And at that, it's like, okay, one kill really, really stood out to me. And then another kill that was in there felt very like Eli Roth Hostel-y, but it kind of drags on and you're like, okay, I get it. I get what you're doing. Can we move this along? I liked the third act suspense that they had built up to that point. It kind of breaks from format, so I did appreciate that. But, and again, the yoga kill in it, I thought the performances really took away from the movie. the pacing again, and yeah, this one's going to banish it to hell because it's not even like forgettable. Like it's a movie I would like to forget, you know? Like I want it banished. So sorry, In a Violent Nature. Sorry. Okay, next up is Smile 2. Smile 2! What a pleasant surprise. Okay, Naomi Scott, the monster in this one, the abilities it had, the way it toyed with her character being so flawed, but she's trying so hard, and you just see the people around her trying really hard for her. Her mom, you're thinking, is this bitch, like business mom that doesn't care about her really, but like you come to find out that like she really does care about her, and like these distortions that this character is experiencing are really ruining her life, and she's a victim of this parasite, of this monster, taking her down slowly and painfully and mercilessly. I really felt it in this movie. The tension, the scares worked for me. The dancers in that closet scene in the apartment, like I loved that. There's actually surprising moments in here. A better overall story, I thought. It mirrors the first movie, but it works so much better for me in the second one. Just way more compelling. The opening scene, I love the way it just sets up the movie, perfectly links the two movies, ties a bow from the first, and just sets up and gets you going on the second one, and you're like, okay, wow, here we go. I really honestly can't think of many negatives with this movie. Maybe towards the end, it starts to teeter the line of oh, we're going into like red box straight to DVD movie territory, but it tickles it, but it doesn't thankfully go all the way there. So yeah, I'm gonna put this one in pretty great. Whereas Smile 1, I was like, get that shit away from me. I don't, the ending of that movie I really loved. In this movie, in Smile 2, the whole way through I was in. So it's going in pretty great. Okay, next one is Alien Romulus. This is an interesting one for me because very beautiful. Watched it in IMAX. The sound was great. The atmosphere was great. The visuals were great. I loved the characters, right? I loved the robot brother. I loved the sister. I loved their motive, their connection. You could really feel it, and you really want them to succeed, and you want to see them, you know, live. But my catch with this movie is that it kind of doesn't do anything very different to stand out. Months later, it's not a movie that I'm like itching to really rewatch. It was great in the moment, but I don't know if it has this like lasting impact on a larger scale. I'm gonna put it in pretty good. I do wish it had more violence slash horror. But the atmosphere and the monsters, the newborn, like I wish it leaned into that a little bit more. I don't know. There's just something about this one. I wish it had stood out in some angle, some way, a little bit more than it did. So that's why it's going in pretty good. Definitely above inoffensively average. But it's not pretty great territory. It's just pretty good. Okay. Joker 2 is the next movie. This one was probably maybe the number one disappointment of the year. A strength of it is the way it was shot, the cinematography, the colors. Negatives, pretty much everything else. Yeah, the complete misuse of Gaga, the singing, the songs completely derailing and stopping the pacing, the momentum of the movie. It was just such a dull experience. I'm gonna go and banish it to hell because, and it sucks to say that, but yeah, I mean, I think time might be a little kinder to it. I think we'll look back on it and appreciate it for what it was, which is not a Joker story. It's an original story dressed up in superhero attire, but in the context of everything this year, I'm gonna go and banish it to hell because I wish I could take my time back. I wish I could take my money back from watching this movie. It was a letdown, a huge letdown. My enthusiasm in that movie theater started up here and just slowly just went down up until the end. Yeah, so yeah, banish it to hell. Next up is The Substance. Pretty much everything about this movie worked for me. There's nothing I would say was a negative. There's nothing I would take away from it or add to it. Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, the visuals, the soundtrack, the colors, the popping, the lenses of the camera, the way it like shot a space, the contrast, the this story, it feels like something you've seen before, and yet it feels completely new. It feels like a movie or a story that should have always existed. Yeah, it's like this tragic fairy tale kind of thing feeling, but by the end of it, there's also this like sensation, this feeling of release, of freedom, of liberation, from something. And you know what? I I had some earth medicine, if you know what I mean, the other night, and I was looking at myself in the mirror as I was experiencing this earthly medicine, and the substance has this shot, and it's just the face of this character, and she's smiling after a bunch of shit has gone down. How she's like become undone for this world, right? In the movie, I was looking at myself in the mirror going, this is me. This is me. The essence of me is captured in my eyes, the windows to the soul, in my mouth, what I speak, and what I, how I sensorially take in the world, maybe, but like, this is me. And it was just something about like the disembodiment that we experience in this movie. There was some flavor of uplifting. I don't know. It was just quite a roller coaster. I was watching it. I was in the whole time. I was like, how the hell did I not know this was coming out? I missed it in theaters. I was like, this movie is so perfect. There's nothing about this movie that is not working for me. I loved it the whole way through. It's an all-time fave. All-time fave. Okay, next one is Dune 2. Um, you know what? It matches the first movie. It even exceeds the first movie in some aspects. I love that the way the world was so much bigger in the second one. I love that we got to explore different settings and different people, different groups of people. We got a deeper look into these people. It balanced all of those really well. Very cinematic, getting to see Paul's journey and where he's going, what he's doing, and all of that was new to me. All of that was a trip. And I'm like, okay, where the hell are we going next, right? The grand space opera works for me. Yeah, I'm so excited to see what we do going forward. It just feels like this like biblical scale story. It's going in pretty great, like a high pretty great. I don't know if it's all-time fave for me, but like all-time fave for me is like I would buy the movie. I would have it in my collection. I'm maybe. I'm telling you, it's tickling that territory because I don't know. There's just something. Dune 1 and 2, once you watch them the first time, maybe the second time, I feel like you get most of what you're going to get out of it then. But I don't know. Maybe if you have a nice home setup, maybe it would be such a visual treat, kind of like with Avatar by James Cameron, to just experience it at home over and over and over again. To me, that's like an all-time fave. It's a movie that I'd want to experience over and over and over again. Yeah, high, pretty great. Okay, Heretic. I feel insane because people are filleting this movie like crazy, right? And I'm like, I don't know. I loved the characters. The two Mormon girls, I felt attached to them. I wanted them to be okay. Hugh Grant, he was seductively sinister villain, and I don't know if I was a fan of like his whole motive and his whole mission, and the whole the thing he puts them through, and his little project, and the way he's testing them. I didn't really like that aspect of the story, but I did by the end of it love that it was kind of making you question what was real and what was not, and making you sort of ask questions about faith and belief. And I had initially placed it in forgettable as fuck. I'm gonna put it in low inoffensively average, because in a way it is a movie that is forgettable to me, but I do see some of the merits in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it, yeah, in inoffensively average, low inoffensively average. Next up is Furiosa. I'm kind of surprised by myself to say this, but I didn't think Furiosa was that good. When I was watching it, it's visual candy, right? And I loved getting the expansion on the Mad Max world. Chris Hemsworth did great. Some of the action in it, of course, is going to be great, but it never tops or matches for me the experience of Fury Road. Anya, I people are like, but I'm like, I prefer Charlize, and the journey we see from the origin story of Furiosa, I already appreciated the heaviness of her experience, her life experience, and her trauma, and it came through so well in Fury Road with Charlize. I didn't really need all this extra stuff to feel more respect, more heavy empathy for this character. I didn't need it. In a way, it just felt a little bit of an unnecessary film, but I did appreciate the enlightenment of how we got to where we were in Fury Road. I would have preferred just the continuation from Fury Road, but whatever. As it stands, it's gonna go unforgettable for me because I'm never gonna rewatch it. I don't want to. Yeah. Okay, A Quiet Place Day One. Strengths, Lupita Nyong'o. Negatives, underwhelming use slash presentation of the monsters. Underwhelming end of the world as we knew it angle. Underwhelming violence slash destruction slash suspense. A somewhat like thin slash dull plot overall as well. And again, felt quite unnecessary to the franchise. The prequel didn't add to anything, kind of like with Furiosa. These prequels aren't adding anything. They're just cash grabs that they don't really justify their existence or justify a continued interest in the franchise. So yeah, I'm putting A Quiet Place Day One right next to Furiosa in forgettable as fuck. Okay, challengers. Challengers, strengths, all the actors, the flow of the movie, the way it was laid out. I love a movie where you start at a point and then you get thrown into another a point in the story, and you're getting information in that aspect that's going to recontextualize what's happening in present day. I love a movie like that. Strange Darling is like that. That's coming up in the list. The music by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, that score, that album in whole, the whole thing. It's rare for me to love an entire album, period. It's even rarer for me to love an entire score, period. So this one, they really did their big one with it. Great payoffs. Once you get to the end of the movie, the buildup that's taken to get there. Everything you know by the time you get to the end, just fueling this like tension and the grand opus that is that last tennis match, and the way it just literally throws you in. It literally throws you in. You are the ball. You are the tennis ball. I fucking loved it. Everyone was beautiful, gorgeous, sexy. Challengers, I can't think of really any negatives for it. And it's going as an all-time fave. I would watch and rewatch this movie over and over again the rest of my life. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful movie as an art piece, as a story. It just works for me on all levels. So yeah, thank you, Luca. Thank you. Okay, we were just talking about Strange Darling. Strange Darling is next up. Strengths, Kyle Gallner and the actress. I'll put her name on here on the screen. They did great. The side characters were great. There's this older couple in the movie, and they're just so sweet and cute, and you feel attached to them. Like these people, it feels like a very real, raw movie, and as shit goes down, there's no sense of like it being jokey, funny, throwaway kills. This feels, real. And the non-chronological storytelling and format of the plot, it starts at like chapter 5, takes you to chapter 3, then takes you to like chapter 6, and then takes you to chapter 1, and you're like, how the fuck is this all going to come together? But it comes together so well. The third act does start to teeter a bit as far as tone and pacing goes. You know how I was saying, like, it doesn't feel throwaway or playful in like a cheap way the whole way through. Towards the end, it starts to get to a point where it's like, okay, we're going a bit far. But all in all, amazing movie, pretty great. I went into it blind. I suggest you go into it as blind as possible. So good, so good. One of the biggest surprises of this year, and it's going in pretty great. Okay, next movie is Kung Fu Panda 4. Strengths, absolutely none. Negatives, literally everything else. Please banish this fucking movie to hell. DreamWorks, what was this cash grab? What was this fucking cash grab? It's an insult to the last 3 movies, to the effort that was put into the plot, the animation, the characters of the last 3 movies, to deliver this cheap ass, low effort version of that. I watched it, a matinee showing on a Saturday morning, thinking I'd have a really nice time. I left thinking I could have saved myself the money and time. This wasn't even rental territory. I was checking my phone constantly for the time. I never want to hear about this movie ever fucking again, DreamWorks. I hated Kung Fu Panda 4. It was a waste of time. And yeah, banish it to hell. Again, only because of how insulting it is to the rest of the franchise. If we're just going quality wise, it's like a forgettable movie. But as a whole product, banish it to hell. Banish it the fuck to hell. Okay, next movie is going to be Megalopolis. Strengths, interesting concept for a movie plot. From the trailer, it looked amazing. I was like, oh wow, we're getting this grand epic vision from a director with a lot of experience and history, and a legacy movie is finally coming. This passion project is coming. I'm gonna give it such a good chance. Oh my gosh, it's going to have thought-provoking themes. It's going to be grand. It's going to be the next Blade Runner. Like I I went into it thinking all these things, but also my expectations started to go down because all of the people were shitting on it. So I did go watch it with my expectations lowered. I had a drink in hand. I was like, if anything, I'll be a little happy if I'm having a bad time, if it's not a good movie. Everything about this movie was a fucking negative. The CGI, the execution, the acting, the dialogue, the pacing, the effects, everything sucked in this movie. I hated it. I fell asleep. And by the time it ended, I was legitimately so upset. I had vitriol towards this movie, towards Megalopolis. And I literally felt embarrassed to be seen there. Embarrassed to have paid money to go and sit and watch this movie. When the credits started rolling, I didn't want to, like, everyone behind me that was starting to get up and chat and shit. I was like, I don't want them to see me. I have to get out. I power walked out of that theater because of how awful that experience was. Megalopolis was a piece of shit. Banish it to fucking hell, please. Okay, next movie is going to be Cuckoo. Um, Strengths, Hunter Schafer. The villain and the villain's abilities, I thought that was an interesting setup. The setting of the movie is beautiful. All the technical aspects of this movie worked for me. I wish this movie had leaned into the sisterhood angle of the plot, because I think it was like tickling it, but it leaned way more into the creepy head science guy that's doing the studies angle rather than the sisterhood angle. And then another strength was the hotel room jump scare. That shit was actually really off-putting and creepy to watch. But the rest of the movie, I was not a fan of. The villain's motives, the way that it starts to go off the rails in a really silly, mood-killing, obvious way. I expected a bit more of like a high-level, artsy horror film that ended up being a goofy premise. There is a really cool scene between the sisters at the end. It contrasts the sisters with these two dudes that are around them, and like the roles that they're playing in the story in relation to the sisters. But it came way too late in the movie for me, and it didn't save the rest of the movie. Again, there were cool effects, cool moments of suspense, the abilities of the villain, but it didn't work for me. I think it was trying too much, and I think, yeah, forgettable. It's going in forgettable. Okay, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is the next movie. Strengths, beautiful, beautiful post-apocalyptic world. The gay ape, he was great for the little bit that he was in the movie. There's great fights, great suspense. That like angry gorilla was actually so scary. The sequences with him, the big gorilla chasing a character down, so good. Negatives, long movie. I didn't care for the lead female character at all. She was so annoying to me, honestly. The whole thing with her being so primal, animalistic seeming, and like cave womany, and then suddenly she's this like badass, almost James Bond level, intelligent, like skilled fighter. I don't know. It was just a very, sometimes a disjointed experience, and it did drag a bit. But all in all, I would say it was a pretty good movie. It's definitely above average. It's a pretty good movie. Especially that first watch. That first watch was so good. I did go back and rewatch it a second time, and it didn't hold up as well because of the length, because of the drag on. But yeah, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was a solid sci-fi film that came out in 2024 for sure. Pretty good. Pretty good. Okay, Monkey Man, directed by Dev Patel. His directorial debut is next. Strengths, intense and violence. It reminded me of Unleashed with Jet Li. if you guys remember that movie from the early 2000s. Intense plot, great main character, great villains. I love a movie with like a hierarchy of villains and our characters like literally coming through everybody. I love a movie like that. Great visuals, the colors, the camera, the way it would move. Great fights. The choreography was so cool. Like certain characters that come in at the end of the movie that do some fighting, they looked so pretty fighting. The way they those characters are reclaiming a certain power as they're fighting. I fucking love that aspect of the movie. Negatives, some humor in it doesn't land, slash a little bit of the tone is a little bit disjointed, but all in all, this is a pretty this is a pretty great movie. Close to an all-time fave. I don't know. After months of sitting with it, I think I'm comfortable putting it in pretty great. Dev Patel, the way he imbued this vengeance story with the culture he's familiar with themes that he finds thought-provoking and necessary to bring up, as far as like wealth disparity, social outcasts. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's pretty great. Pretty great. This next one might be kind of a hot take because I've seen so many people say they love it. I saw the TV Glow. I thought it was an interesting concept for a film. I went into it with expectations that it would be like a horror movie. What I got was like a more of an existential dread movie, and the execution of the movie, like the dialogue, sometimes it was a bit painful to sit through, a bit drawn out to sit through. Pacing issues, again, were not scary. I could kind of see the low budget seams of the movie, and that kind of took me out of the experience. But I did appreciate the like nostalgic aesthetic, the way it kind of placed us in the 90s and really early 2000s. I really, really loved that. And all in all, I did appreciate the message of like nostalgia being somewhat of a killer. People say there's like a transgender undercurrent allegory going on there. I didn't dive into that aspect of it really. I just kind of saw it as like for what it presented itself as, and what I got on first viewing. And what I got, yeah, was just an overall somewhat uncomfortable, heavy watch that by the end I was like, wow, this is I don't know, this is kind of sad and somber, and I'm gonna put it in inoffensively average. I do see the merits of it, and I do see how some people could come out of it going, wow, that was amazing. I really appreciated the end product that it was, but for me, it didn't really work. So yeah, I'm gonna put it in inoffensively average. Okay, immaculate. Strengths, the third act. The third act is when shit goes off the rails and it actually starts trying to do some different stuff as far as like with camera usage and like the tone of it. The tone, it starts to like maybe become a little bit more playful as the third act comes in. Negatives, I would say, was pretty much everything else. I thought it was kind of like a predictable film. It felt very basic, very been there, done that, straight to DVD level territory. I thought the religious imagery, iconography, the way it was kind of trying to talk about nuns and women being subjugated by the church, the men in the church. I thought that was like an interesting thing it was tackling for a little bit, but I don't know. It didn't do it for me. It felt quite surface level, and yeah. So I'm gonna put Immaculate and Forgettable as fuck. Okay, so Argyle. I went into it not knowing anything about it. I went into it on a really like, it was a sad period of my life, and I just wanted something fun and upbeat and unserious to watch, and Argyle really was that movie. I see the flaws. I know why it's not a perfect film by any means, but I just loved how silly and throwback feeling it felt as a movie. I loved the twists and turns. It's been a while since I had seen like a spy comedy thriller kind of movie, and I loved just the plot twists. There were some fun fight scenes. The third act fight, the way they do it is so good. I was gleefully like watching it in my seat when it came on. Like the music it would use, the colors, the slow-mo, the choreography of the fights, like it was just so good. That like Kingsman energy. It's just an all right movie. People act like it's trash and awful, but it's just a movie that you go watch and have fun with. It's nothing you're supposed to take too fucking seriously. And I'm gonna put it in inoffensively average, like a high inoffensively average. Yeah. because I know it's not technically or maybe critically, artistically the most great movie out there, but honestly, it wasn't as bad as people keep pretending it is. So, yeah. Late Night with the Devil is the next movie. This one annoyed me. It got on my nerves. I thought it was trying so hard, and I thought it was trying to be so much darker than it thought it was being. But the premise was interesting, and there was a cool demonic entity at the end of the movie. And the aesthetic, the packaging of the movie was very well done. Very well done. Uh, but the performances, the rich people are evil people, sell yourself to Hollywood angle was so basic and unamusing, unsurprising to behold. The ending was underwhelming and sucked. Yeah, people again were acting like this movie was like, oh my god, so good, but I didn't think it was that good. I couldn't take it really seriously. Just some of the acting and like when the demonic entity started to like present itself way more, that's when it got pretty more fun to watch. But it was, I don't know, it didn't. I feel like it didn't really know how to be or who to be as a movie. So what I got to me was just a very all over the place experience that had nuggets of good, but all in all, I'm gonna put it in forgettable as fuck. Okay, Inside Out 2, I loved the characters, Riley and all the emotions, and then the new characters. I loved getting to know them and being around them. They're characters you enjoy watching and being around, right? A great depiction and explanation of what goes into personality creation, you know? I didn't really capture a magic that I wanted it to. Emotionally, it does hit, but it didn't hit me as hard as the first one did. And as a plot, it felt quite kind of recycled from the first movie. So to me, it falls into the pretty good territory because I was happy. I did enjoy my time with it. But it's not a movie that like I couldn't stop thinking about later or that I kept, you know, made a huge impression in my mind. It was just a solid entry into this franchise. And I do look forward to what they do next. So yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Okay, next movie is VHS Beyond. Strengths, the compilation experience. I love a compilation. Just the fun bag, grab bag of like different vibes and aesthetics and tones, and these directors putting their spin on this like core theme. In this movie, it being aliens. So yeah, I loved it. The aesthetic was great. The horror and the violence was great. It worked for me. Feels very dirty, grimy, grindhousey, and feels like you're watching something you're not supposed to at times. And it was genuinely like there's a certain segment in here that actually had me like, you know, like on the edge of my seat. Like the in certain segments, the POV use, the camera first person use is so well used. Negatives, of course, not all segments are a hit. Some of them are misses. And you know, for a movie, kind of like low budget, underground type feeling movie, some of the performances obviously aren't always going to hit or be great, but nothing that takes away too much from the overall experience. So to me, yeah, VHS Beyond is like a high, pretty good, almost pretty great movie experience. Next movie is Beetlejuice 2. Strengths, Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, of course, Catherine O'Hara, oh my god. Basically the cast. Loved the cast. The small head guy, the hot villain lady. Willem Dafoe just kind of felt thrown in. He didn't really feel like he added much to the experience. It's Willem Dafoe though, so you can't be too mad that he's in there. It was cool to revisit the world, and there was sometimes good humor. But as far as the world goes and the humor felt toned back from the original, right? It didn't feel as sharp, as witty, as funny. It doesn't match the magic, and I didn't like that it basically kind of just reused the world, the settings, the elements from the first one and didn't add too much to it. It didn't feel it did too much new from it. A weird, unfocused seeming plot. It felt like it was tackling a lot, juggling many balls when maybe we could have just used one or two of those balls to have a good story. And I really, really missed Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin's characters. I know they're, you know, older as actors now. I know that sticking them in here would have been probably maybe too fan servicey and unnecessary. But I did miss their characters in this movie, and it would have been nice to have something was missing in Beetlejuice 2. Let me put it in pretty good because I felt like my time was well spent at the movies with it. I had a good enough time. I chuckled. And again, I love these characters. I love the family. I love the death world. I love that it did do like claymation sequences. That was interesting to me. But yeah, I would have loved maybe more of an expansion on the ghost world, on the world of the dead, more focus as far as like Beetlejuice and Winona Ryder goes. Yeah, I don't know. It felt nearly like an unnecessary sequel that didn't really add much. I think it could have been done way better. All right, next movie is Abigail. Strengths, ensemble cast. I love me an ensemble cast movie. Glass Onion, that's like 90% of the reason why I love it. I just love a movie that like throws a bunch of characters into a setting and has them interplay with each other. That's so fun to me. The cast in this movie was great. The characters that got thrown in together were great. The way they played off each other. They were villains in a way, yeah, but like they were presented in a way that also you're like, huh, you're not all that bad. Like the little girl, Miss Abigail, that actress, she acted her ass off. The way her character was like so different at times, very multifaceted. There's fun sequences in there with her abilities and the way she attacks. There's lots of blood. Again, the banter between people, the dialogue worked for me. Negatives, not a scary movie. And then by the end, that like radio silence treatment slash tone takes away from the movie for me a little bit. It felt like it was trying to retread certain Ready or Not aspects, and the way they kind of throw humor in sometimes is it's that radio silence touch that doesn't always really work for me. I didn't like the way they did the Scream movies either. So I'm gonna put Abigail in inoffensively average. I overall had a good time. It's not a movie I would go back and rewatch of my own volition. It's not a movie that made a huge impression in my memory either. So that's why it's inoffensively average, because I still had a decent time watching it. It wasn't boring. It wasn't as basic as I thought it would be, but it also didn't really surprise me. So yeah, inoffensively average. All right, and then last movie to be ranked is going to be The Wild Robot. Strengths. I was really caught off guard by the way this movie presents nature as nature. It presents death as death. It presents survival of the fittest in a very plainly stated way. I appreciated that. Like as a kid, that would have helped me a lot, except that like the circle of life is the circle of life. It's just the way things work. Death is a part of living, and sometimes that's, you know, so I did appreciate that. But I loved the angle of this movie that this robot also introduces kindness as a survival strategy, kindness despite the fact that maybe you're unwelcome, kindness despite the fact that maybe you don't fit in. I love that. The animation, the characters that you become attached to, and you just don't want anything bad to happen to them. It's very heart-tugging, very heartwarming, very sincere and earnest movie, which was so refreshing. DreamWorks, you popped off with this one. You didn't make up for Kung Fu Panda 4. I will never forgive you for that, but you did your thing with The Wild Robot. Negatives, by the end it did get to feeling a bit basic once the villain was introduced and the climax is happening. It feels a bit retready territory. I expected a little bit more. Yeah, the true villainous presence just feels a bit tacked on and surface level by the end. But all in all, The Wild Robot is going in pretty good, high pretty good to almost pretty great territory for me. So yeah, that's the last movie I'm ranking for this year. And okay, that does it. I finally finished fucking ranking all these fucking films. I know some of y'all are gonna agree. I know some of y'all are gonna disagree on some of my takes. Feel free to try to convince me otherwise. Give me your perspective. Give me your angle on movies that I talked about in this list. Again, for 2025, I'm wanting to really get in my film commentary, film critic bag. I want to increase my media literacy. I want to talk about these movies with more nuance and give them the respect to the effort and the work that goes into it that they deserve. Even the movies I shat on, I have to respect the work that went into it. I have to respect that there was a creator behind it with a vision, and this is their baby. So again, even though it didn't work for me, I'm never gonna hate on or shit on other people liking the product, even if it didn't work for me. I'm not gonna try to convince you to not enjoy what you enjoy. I'm just gonna give you my perspective on why I didn't enjoy it. And yeah, so uh, anyway, thank you for watching if you made it this far, and I will catch y'all in the next one.